I first wanted to just say hello to everyone and a massive thank you for carving out an hour in your day to join us for this conversation. Um, like I said a minute ago, I'm Michelle. I'm the one of the co-founders of Community Academy. Um, we exist to further the existence of community as like a pillar of your marketing strategy. And so we've done everything from running workshops on community marketing to hosting a masterclass to actually working directly one-on-one with brands who want to elevate their community strategy. So we created Brand Together, this conversation series out of a desire to like just get the conversation going and to like celebrate and illuminate those leaders in the industry and out there in the world who are like growing their brands and their businesses through a community approach. Um, and so that's how we've landed here today with our gorgeous guest, Karen. So I'll do a quick little intro of who Karen is. And then I have some questions selfishly that I'm going to throw at Karen. But I'm also going to be very intentional to save some time at the end of this for anyone to hop off of mute and throw any key questions that you have for Karen. So as we're chatting, just kind of make a point of jotting down any questions that you have, or even you can pop them in the chat. That's another mechanism, and we will go from there. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, Karen. So Karen is the co-founder and CEO of Blume. So just by a little show of virtual hands, who has tried Blume before? Who knows of the brand? Am I drinking my Super Bloom Super Belly right now? Yes, indeed. And it is so good. So Karen, it was like Blume was born. You're going to tell the brand story, obviously, but it was so inspiring to see you launch this company kind of in those early days of the pandemic. And really, it was a side of the desk thing for you for a period of time. And then fast forward to today, it's like every time I open my Instagram, I see another incredible influencer like talking in the most convincing way about your gorgeous products. And it's like it makes me personally feel so excited and proud to know you as the genius woman who came up with this concept. And one thing that I got incredibly wrong in the promotions of this event was I said that you had opened since launching, opened over 4,000 retail doors, and then I got schooled because it's actually over 6,000. So no big deal. I can't wait to dive into conversation all about like your growth strategy and how community fits in. But before we do that, I'm going to throw a couple rapid fire questions your way, Karen. So bear with me here. Um, you live in Vancouver, correct?
North Vancouver.
Oh, North Vancouver, represent. What's your favorite thing about living in North Vancouver?
Oh, it's got to be how like easy it is to access the outdoors. I grew up in Toronto and I moved here for university, and just how easy it is to disconnect from the day to day, the from your laptop and to get on a trail. Like there's just nothing like it.
Okay, we're the same person, by the way. Grew up in Toronto, moved here for university, now live in North Van, and also obsessed with like access to nature. Okay, Krista would be so mad at me for forgetting this. So everyone, while we're doing this rapid fire, just top into the chat, introduce yourself. Let us know, like, are you here representing a brand? Are you representing yourself and you're building your personal brand? Let us know. And then just share like what inspired you to join this conversation today. So we'll get the chat lit up while Karen and I keep going with these rapid fires. Okay, one Blume product that you can't live without.
The lemon ginger super belly. I am 7 months pregnant and had so much nausea in my pregnancy, and it actually was such a lifesaver.
Ginger pregnancy, say no more. Well, congratulations also, by the way. Your second baby is on the way. I love that for you. Go-to daily ritual that keeps you grounded.
Ooh, that's a good one. right now, like those rituals change for me, but right now it's sort of like a garden visit. I'm working on my veggie garden. I'm trying to do some cut
Awesome.
flowers this year. And in the morning, I go down with my coffee and my dog just to like inspect and just to get the lay of the land. And it's such a good way to stay grounded in the morning.
So first of all, move over Jillian Harris. Karen is coming for you with her cut
Well,
flowers.
I've currently harvested about half a salad of spinach. So,
Got it. Baby
so
steps.
we have some work to go, but I am enjoying the process.
Love. Okay, great. Secondly, you are already in the caregiver role, caring for your garden, and you're getting ready. So great. Um, okay, and then finally, what's a word you would use to describe this season of your life?
Wholesome. I feel like that's my theme this year is more of the baking, the walking, the gardening, the wholesome friendships and conversations that sort of make life feel sweet. Um, and the gratitude it gives you. So that's the theme word that I'm using this year is wholesome.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's like it reminds me of just being present and
Yeah.
like thinking into presence, though I'm sure that's hard for you some days because of your role as, no big deal. Again, CEO of a massively growing CPG company. Well, thanks, Karen. Okay, so everyone, welcome to anyone who just joined. We just finished up our little rapid fire with Karen, and I'm going to start throwing some questions her way. But I want to plug again that there's going to be time at the end to ask your own curious questions. So make a note of those as we go along. All right, this is a juicy one. First question: tell us your founder story, Karen.
Um, My founder story. Okay, well, I got to take everyone back in time a little bit. So, originally from Toronto, I moved to Vancouver and went to the Sauder School of Business, where I studied commercial real estate finance. So, at some point in my life, I did a big pivot. And when I was in that industry, I found I was doing a ton of coffee meetings. I wasn't in alignment with my work. And so I just felt a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I was struggling with digestion and health issues, and sort of made a decision that I wanted to live more intentionally with my wellness. But I didn't come from a family that was very health oriented, very wellness oriented. And I really came to it as a brand new consumer. And so when I walked the aisles of the supplement stores, Whole Foods, and all those types of things, I just found it really clinical and really confusing. There were so many conflicting pieces of messages. I was trying to piece together what was right for me based on, at the time, blogs, group chats, gut feeling. And it just felt like it was more clinical, more expensive, more complicated than it should be. And when you look at the supplement aisle, and this really hasn't changed that much today, like fast forward 8 years later, is that there's almost two camps. One is very athlete performance focused products that are competing on level of electrolyte, level of protein, and it's almost all like buff guys flexing on the front of a white tub. And then the products that were focused on women, very weight management driven, very cleanse driven. At the time when I was sort of getting, exploring my own wellness before Blume, there was a product called Wild Rose Detox that was all the rage. It was sort of when people were doing these cayenne pepper, lemon drinks. And so I just really didn't feel represented in that aisle. And Blume was really born out of that, originally as a side project. So our first product was a turmeric latte, and it was sort of around caffeine management. It was bringing to life a tradition that something called jamu, which is an elixir that I grew up with. I'm Indonesian, but modernizing it for North American palates. And just felt so immediately inspired by the entrepreneurial path, just the people you meet, how lit up I felt by the work. Like I've always been like a project person, but combine project, passion, your own business, like it just unlocked a whole different level of passion for me. And so that's really how Blume got started.
Oh my gosh, so incredible. And like you clearly just had that entrepreneurial spirit inside of you, though you started in more of like a traditional corporate path. Um, I selfishly want to hear a little bit more about like your product offering because I've watched it shift over the years, right? Like really going out with the like disrupting the coffee ritual, right? With this like new super bloom latte. Am I even saying that right?
We call them
Would you call
superfood
it
lattes, but superbloom is better.
superfood?
I'm going
I
to
don't
steal
know
that.
why through Bloom is superfood, but your brand has just like
No,
exploded in
yeah,
my
like
brain.
I love that.
Yeah, tell me more about your like the product evolution, I suppose.
So, yeah, originally it was, I was in all these coffee meetings, I was working this corporate job. And when you go to a Starbucks, let's say, or a coffee shop, almost 90% of it is syrup based. If you're getting half sweet, you're getting half the flavor. Almost everything is auto espresso. And it was affecting digestion, sleep, anxiety, all the things I sort of mentioned before. And so we initially worked with specialty cafes on serving caffeine free alternatives that were sugar free, organic superfoods, and superfood lattes is what we focused on for the first 5 years of the Blume mission. And really, what has evolved from there is that we've built this incredible community around Blume.
Yeah.
We were a direct to consumer business first, which has the special privilege of being able to survey customers, talk to them, do interviews, have them be involved in what they want to see from you. And we actually sent out a survey asking that question, just like literally, like if we could do any product in the world, what product do you want to see from us? What are problems you're facing day to day? How could we help? And we learned that 80% of our consumers mentioned gut in that survey in some way. It might not have been like, I have bloating issues, I'm dealing with perimenopause, but that word gut came up in 80% of the people who responded. And so it really informed that Blume had the license to go other places. If we really wanted to support wellness journeys, we could do that beyond the coffee cup. And that's how Super Belly was born. So we have two product lines now: superfood lattes, which are organic superfoods, coffee alternatives. It's sort of about transitioning your second cup so you're not over caffeinated and you're protecting your sleep and sort of the impacts of having too much caffeine. And Super Belly. Super Belly is a comprehensive gut blend. It has apple cider vinegar, electrolytes, a science backed probiotic, and it's so delicious. I love how it tastes. I'm completely biased, but I love it. And that product has been really like a big focus for us over the last 2 years and is now in over like 6,000 retail doors and has over 25,000 subscribers. Is a really special product line for us.
Again, no big deal. I just want to underscore that because I know firsthand, really, how much of a hustle that is. And so just let's take a quick minute for some snaps for Karen and her team for just like, yeah, that's no small feat to open up 6,000 retail doors. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Okay, so next up, okay, this I'm actually really curious about. So you've got this strong identity, you've kind of been playing with like you've got an aesthetic, a tone, you're clear on your values. But how did you really figure out who this brand was for? And then like how has having that clarity helped shape your decision making as you've grown the brand?
It's so funny because I don't feel like I've that's been clear from my side. So it's so nice to hear that people looking in feel like it's clear. But I think the thing that has been clear for me is that I never wanted Bloom to fall into those two camps. So the weight management camp, where it was sort of more about shame, punishment, diet driven culture. That's the path to wellness. And I never wanted us to fall into this aspirational camp, we call it, where it's showing almost an untainable version of wellness where a person is meditating an hour a day, has seems to have no stress in their life, is somehow able to exist on salads and green juices that magically appear. So we wanted Blume to represent like a realistic wellness process that was for everybody. So really showed the flexibility in what wellness can mean to an individual, and in fact found inspiration in that. And so we had that sense. Like I had that sense that I wanted to feel represented by these products. I wanted it to be things that fit seamlessly into my life. And it was more about progress versus perfection. In terms of the aesthetic, I love pink. I don't know. I'm wearing a purple shirt right now. I think just wellness is often like the white tubs, the green organic leaves. There's like a picture of a turmeric root somewhere. And it didn't pull me in a way that screamed like lifestyle. I want to do this every day. I'm proud to have this on my countertop. And so when we designed kind of like the brand guidelines for Blume and how we wanted to show up in the world, part of it was that we wanted it to feel friendly and warm and something that you were proud to drink and have like an almost like an element of beauty in it. And so that's really it was like the grasps of these like ideas that we felt so strongly. And only recently, Bloom is almost 9 years old. Only recently do we actually have a written down brand guideline that is like, this is yes, this is no. Like it was more like something we all understood as a team, like who we are and how we want to show up in the world. And um, it really hasn't been solidified in like until like the last 12 months.
I think there's something to learn in that. It's getting too precious too early on with how you want the brand to show up. Like I think similarly to what you said earlier about asking your customers and inviting them into the building of Bloom and the product roadmap, like opening yourself up to and experimenting without getting too rigid too early on, I think is like, yeah, a great strategy actually. And then also I think about, there was that like big dopamine dressing trend for a while. I feel like Bloom in your brand has the like dopamine effect as well. Just when you see the product packaging, you're like, ah, it just feels so nice. So you've nailed it. Okay. I have a little follow-up question to that. So then from when you think about like the lens of community and when we kind of challenged ourselves at Community Academy to like come up with a bit of a definition for what community is, especially from a brand perspective. So way we think about it is like drawing people in almost like as if there's this magnetic force pulling people into your brand. And beyond that, like actually into a purpose that's kind of bigger than whatever it is that you're selling. So for Bloom, what would you say that you're inviting people in to be a part of when you think about the community that you're building?
Hmm. I love that definition, by the way, of community. I think it is a word that gets thrown around and gets used a lot and is almost being like, dashboards are being applied to, like it's number of followers, it's number of engagements. That's what community means. And that isn't what it is. It is sort of like this magnetic force around a brand, this special feeling that's very hard to describe. And the way that we think about it at Bloom is more around like what value are we putting into the world. So we're not trying to gain a number of customers per day. We're not trying to gain a number of followers in a month. We're not trying to like game a system. We're trying to build real connections and put actual value into the world. And that's what people respond to. And I think why they come to Bloom is really to have honest conversations about what health actually looks like for most people, what wellness actually looks like for women. Um, Women's health is something that's like underfunded, under researched, under talked about, and only now is really getting the attention that it really deserves. And it's funny because at Bloom I do lots of retail pitches, team talks, um, investor pitches, and people will say, "Well, what about men? Why, like, don't you want men to be included in the Bloom brand? Why do you want to be focused on women?" There's a big enough market with women. It's okay for us to specialize and really focus on the needs of women and talk about issues that impact women. And so at a certain point, if you're something to everybody, you're nothing to everybody too. And so I think what we're inviting people into is a safe space where we are honest, we're trustworthy, and we're trying to be your friend, like genuinely be your friend. And from that, it's given us 10 times back to what we give to the community in terms of, ideas, inspiration, passion, all those types of things. And so I think that in CPG specifically, like consumer packaged goods, the space that I'm in, um, it has become so overwhelmed by the idea of dollar signs and exits that it's lost some of its heart. Like if you walk
Sure.
trade shows like Expo West or CHFA, you can feel that like originally these industries popped up from like a true need for organic foods, a true need for health and wellness, real conversations about changing our food systems. And now it's about what is the fastest route to sell your business. And that is like the furthest away from what I want to feel about going to work. Like that's not what inspires me to do the hours and the time that it takes to build a brand with heart. And so I think that when people come into our community, there's an authenticity to what we're doing that they feel. Um, at least that's what my hope is.
Oh my gosh, so much of what you said, I'm just like, first of all, the world needs more founders just like you, so never change. Second of all, Emily, I could not help but think about you and how much you would have to say about the underfunded space of women's health. Um, and so thank you, Karen, for surfacing that and just like being willing to say, that's not who we're going after. We are for women. Um, Men are welcome to buy our products. Yeah, thank you. That's super powerful. And yeah, there have been times that as I followed along, as a cheerleader, as a customer, um, where I've just so appreciated the transparency piece. I think like it's brands can underestimate the power of being vulnerable, willing to be vulnerable, like the way that you've personally reached out to the community over the years and said, guys, our Shopify site failed, or like it failed us. Help, essentially, right? Like being willing to kind of go out there and put your heart on your sleeve and put things on the line, it almost feels like. I think that has naturally contributed to that feeling of like relationship and viewing Blume as a friend almost, yeah, as someone that or like a brand that you feel like so I think, yeah, keep that up.
I think ultimately, consumers or customers are inundated with product and inundated with offers and inundated with messages,
Yeah.
and they're not going to connect to Super Belly has apple cider vinegar, X amount of electrolytes, X amount of probiotics. They connect to the story, they connect to the people behind the brands, and they connect to missions. And so I think that the faster that brands root themselves in something that's real and authentic to them, that they can then talk about in a meaningful, authentic way for 10 years, because that might be how long it takes to get a brand off the ground, is the better. You know what I mean? The faster that you move away from product attributes to product purpose and the value that you're trying to put into the world, the sooner you can build that community around you.
Amen, sister. I As you were talking, and I was picturing that moment or the experience of walking through the trade shows and seeing all the brands, like trying to get new customers in and or new retailers or whatever it might be. There was a leader that I once worked for in the past, and it really stuck with me. He used to say, when like it's tempting to operate from a place of either comparison or frankly desperation. But like going far you're going to go far when you operate from a place of inspiration. And it feels like you're operating from a place of inspiration. You're not, and you're doing it for the right reasons, right? Not, it's like how many people's lives can we impact for the better rather than, you know, how much can we comp over ourselves year over year? Not to say that you don't have to also look at that. We all know. Um, yeah. So anyway, okay. Next question. So,
I think just
up. Oh, go ahead.
to layer onto that too, is like if you're coming from a place of inspiration, it also just gives you so much more longevity in what you're doing. Yes, it's going to attract the right customers, and yes, it'll take you far, but it's also about so much about being in business and being a small business founder and being an entrepreneur is resiliency and time put in and your personal runway, not cash runway, your personal runway to execute on a vision. And if you're doing it from a place of, can I get there as fast as that guy? Can I sell as many as that person? Like, that's not inspiring. At least it isn't for me. It's, but if you're doing it from a place of, oh, I can replace this many bottles in the world, I can take this much garbage out of the, you know what I mean? From there, from that place,
Yep.
it's just, it gives you so much more longevity if you're enjoying what you're doing. And so um I've like really pivoted my thinking about what success in CPG or success in entrepreneurship means. And I think, and what my number one responsibility is to my team and my business. And I think just having runway, both emotional and sort of like passion wise as well as financially, is one of the strongest things we can do as leaders for our organizations. And so I think coming from a place of inspiration really does that.
Oh, well said. You're a D2C brand. No, you started as a D2C brand. But you've really like flexed into obviously wholesale. Um, and you've built this brand to the place that you've taken it. Um, Largely, not to say that you haven't experimented in, pop-ups and shops, and obviously you've done a lot of like physical retail presence. But how would you say that you've managed to like kind of successfully grow Blume without having that benefit of, especially when you think of like from a community lens, like when you have owned retail, those spaces can really become hubs of connection and hubs of like brand love. So what's been your kind of secret sauce to grow Blume in the way you have without that asset, I guess, on your side?
Something we're investing into more and more is kind of the owned community experience. So recently we did a pop-up at a cafe called the Federal Store. I don't know if anybody knows it. If they're in Vancouver, it's like, it's the hub of Main Street. I feel like it's like, oh, it's almost like a little house.
Yeah.
And you can go in and have a delicious coffee. They have um, tons of small business represented on their shelves. And they were actually one of our first stores. So when I first started Blume, I would go in with like a made up cup of our golden milk to different retailers and see if I could get, onto their menu. And Federal Store was one of the first 10 to say yes, basically. And so it just felt so perfect to host inside their store. And so, we don't have the benefit of an owned retail space when you're very digitally driven. Yes, there are Facebook communities, there's broadcast channels, there's how you engage in DMs, there's, customer interviews and surveys and other things to keep people in your community. But I think people are really craving that face-to-face interaction with a brand. And so we're really investing over the last couple of years more into owning community events and then really making sure that they speak to your personality as a brand. So every drink was on us. There were gifts for
Mhm.
people who, came early and were waiting in line. We were sampling in the line, and we had like a DJ who was there with her baby. And, it's like curating these moments where maybe you don't touch everybody in your community. We've maybe had 300 people that came through that door, but those 300 people are walking away feeling crystal clear about who we are as a brand and leaving with an experience that hopefully they'll tell a friend. So that's one thing that we're investing into. But another way that we do it is that we tag on to other brands and other events and other communities that are in deep alignment with our own. So an example would be the 51. The 51 is like a group that invests in women. They put together events for women to have financial literacy and to further women's leadership. And so we're sampling at events like that where we're tapping into other communities and other events that are happening that also express what our values are as a brand. And so I think being digitally led, you have to work a little harder at showing up in person to events and building community in person. And it's more expensive, it's harder to do, it's all those things. You can send a survey out to 100,000 people way easier than you can to talk to five. And you have to do the work to talk to the five. You have to do the work to do those interviews, to do the reach out. They might not get back to you. You got to reach out to five more. And just because one is easier doesn't mean it's better. It's about like having a pie of these are the ways I'm engaging my community. Some of it's definitely digital, and some of it is tapping into other communities because we can't own every event. We're a startup, there's a limited budget, all those things. And then making your event so crystal clear on what your values are as a brand that those fewer 300 people, 30 people, 10 people coming to a meditation class leave really as brand fans that will tell a friend about you. And so I think it's almost like a funnel, just like you think about how paid ads work or how influencer community management works. There's sort of like different layers of that funnel, and you have to treat community the same way where you can reach mass, but you're not reaching deeply there. And so you have to make sure that there's in your budget, in your time allocation, in your resources, the opportunity to reach people deeply, because that's what really moves the needle at the end of the day.
So great. Everyone who's here and tuned in, like I think Karen just shared a beautiful blueprint for community and how to approach it. I think the touching on the power, the potential power, if done right, of like finding those right brand partners that are already hosting, they're investing in these experiences. So long as the values are alignment is there, that's like such an incredible way for brands that might be lighter on the internal resources side of things. Not to say that it's not a lift in and of itself. And I think you have to almost bring a similar level of creativity to how do you show up inside of those experiences so that you can actually stand out and you're not owning the experience, so you better make sure that you're showing up in a way that like turns some heads and invites people in a powerful way. So yeah, thank you for sharing your blueprint, Karen. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
um okay, I think I'm going to throw one last question your way, and then I'm already seeing the chat light up with questions that people are wanting to ask you. So um okay, so this ties so close to what you just shared. And I think a lot of brands, I don't know, nod your heads out there. Though the one tricky thing with community is that not everyone gets it, especially those like your CFO who's constantly kind of challenging you on where are you investing? What's the return? What's the immediate return on investment, right? Whereas I think we can all acknowledge that community is an investment in your brand health and being a going concern in 5 years, right? And 10 years down the road. So I don't know. I'm curious, since you've really intentionally started investing in community and you're looking to really build that signature experience of Blume when you walk into a Blume community event, what have you noticed in terms of your business performance, I guess? And what advice do you have for other brands that want to start investing more in community but don't really know how to unlock the pressures that be, or address the pressures that be to have every single dollar that you spend return back immediately or in the short
Yeah.
term?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And because I was like a more digitally led marketer, like in the beginning of Bloom, there was definitely a pressure for, well, I can get 3x here, to think that way. But
When you could
there's
get 3x easily through performance marketing, right? In the
yeah,
industry.
and it's measurable and it's understandable and it's explainable and all those types of things. But I think that it only takes you so far, and it doesn't do anything for the inspiration runway that we were talking about. And there are, of course, like measurable performance metrics, like, return on ad spend or something like that, like the revenue derived from an ad and from an email. But there are intrinsic benefits to a business too that maybe are less measurable and easy to explain to a CFO, but can be transformative. And so, an example is that survey that I mentioned earlier before. We asked our audience, what do you want to see from us? We took the time to interview them. We built a little panel of nutritionists and dietitians that were in our creator community to ask, what are your patients seeing? What are you feel like the market's missing? None of that has a direct ROI, right? But it launched a product line that is now 80% of our business, is in 6,000 stores, has 24,000 subscribers, and totally transformed the way that we operate and what our opportunities are and how we even view the potential of the brand. And so saying that something doesn't have a direct ROI and therefore is not worth doing at any stage of business, I think is missing almost the point. It's what it unlocks, right? So at this federal store event, I got to talk to customers one on one and better understand what it is that's valuable to them. And so when we post things about, Blume is plastic neutral, for instance. So when we post things about that or when we email about it, very little engagement. And it would be very easy for us to say, people don't care about it. We should not have this sustainability commitment. But it's one of the things that people bring up anecdotally, number one, if you talk to them in person. And so I think you need to, as a marketer, as a leader, as a founder, whatever you are in your organization, be listening. And it's really hard to truly listen and truly understand your customer if you're only engaging with them in one way. And so I think on the passive sampling, for instance, like sampling for events, that is not something we did in a super meaningful way at the beginning of the business. It's something you can scale little by little. And now we're maybe sending out 250,000 samples a year. So that's something that we've like really gradually and intentionally grew. So you can go from, 30 stickbacks for us at a yoga event for women who are interested in wellness, talking about health, super, super aligned. And then you can expand outwards, like outer layers of, as long as it stays aligned with like your values and your brand proposition and it's aligned partners, you can scale these things in step with your business. And so I think like the way that I would think about it is that often when I talk to new founders or new marketers, they're investing thousands of dollars in a website, thousands of dollars in the brand guidelines and, or like a solid brand aesthetic do's and don'ts, like all these different things in an office space, in a like all these different things. Go do a demo, go stand in a store, talk to a customer. Do they understand it? And do they know how to use it? Like really get to how are people interpreting this product if there's not a landing page telling you exactly why you should buy it. And I think that work can't be skipped. And I still do those demos and do those events because you learn so much from them. And so I guess I would say that you don't have to do thousands of those. I'm not spending every Saturday doing a demo at Whole Foods, but staying in touch with your customer is, I think, a responsibility for any leader in any organization. And it's hard. It's hard because you're being asked to deliver results, to look at the P&L, to extend, you're being asked as the organization grows for more of these classic business needs. But really, as a founder, I feel like one of my biggest responsibilities is to like understand the customer and be the customer. And the best way for me to do that is to talk to them.
1000%. Something we talk a lot about at Community Academy is, and again, it's often in the context of this conversation of like, how do I get my exec team to understand? How do I get my investors to understand this? And our advice is always bring them out to an event, get them out to the finish line of that race, to be the ones putting the medals on people's necks. get them to be the ones serving your newly launched product, and like getting that real-time feedback and seeing those moments where you've created like a moment of transformation for someone, a transformational experience, and then tell me that like this isn't a worthwhile investment. So I love it. I feel like we're so aligned. Okay, we have a chat that's lighting up. Our minutes are dwindling here, so I'm going to open the floor up. We have some chat questions maybe that I can read out, but then I'm going to invite anyone who wants to just hop off mute, just throw a question to Karen by all means. Okay, so Yukari has said, I'm really curious about how consumer education on unique disruptive products, or curious about consumer education on unique and disruptive products by Blume. What do you think worked well for Blume to gain organic repeated purchases? Maybe you've probably covered a little bit of this, but like, oh, and also curious about what didn't work. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to share a little bit of like, what were the stumbling blocks and what were the fails that you've experienced along the way that were kind of necessary for your journey?
So one more time, like what worked to basically bring disruptive products to market?
Yukari,
If
if you want to jump off, you can go ahead.
sorry, I need it broken down to me.
Yeah, because you mentioned that the you didn't really find what you were looking for in the existing market, right?
Mhm.
And then you created the one that worked for you, went that meant true to you and your found consumers who actually exist. But obviously you had to do some sort of education to get them involved, get them enrolled into your product and what
Mm,
Bloom was building and bringing out to the market. So I'm really curious at the beginning of your journey or how you grew and scaled your business, how did that it's like finding your space and expanding that space work like went on?
mm,
And during that process, I was like, what worked and what didn't?
mhm.
Um, Also really curious about how did it transition from like truly just speaking to them directly and like kind of educating to having your community really naturally, organically, like, creating the repeated purchases because that transition also has to happen at some point to be a sustainable business. So, sorry, it's a loaded question, but really curious
Yeah,
about.
no, no. I'm happy to share how I got started. So, um, going back kind of in time, we started with two products really. It was like our turmeric latte and our beetroot latte. And I always say, dominate your backyard, win in your backyard. So sometimes I find that people, when they go to market, they go so broad. We're going to the US, I'm selling to Tennessee. Someone from the UK calls, okay, I'm gonna send product to the UK. And the thesis was that I need to understand how the product's doing in stores, online, with customers. And the easiest place to do that is where I'm in the community too. So started with my local shops, the Federal stores, the vegan supplies, the Delinas of the world here in Vancouver, which are, coffee shops, meeting places where you can see how people are interacting with it, see how they're ordering, see their expressions. And if you can find fit there, then you can expand geographically and try different channels and try different formats. But I think it's really important at the beginning to just assume you're going to have some things wrong. And I certainly did. Originally, the product was called Golden Roots, and it was like a fully turmeric based line. Like you have to go into it really feeling iterative, 1% better every day, approaching it like a project that could change. And the goal, the mission, the values of the company were always the same. I want to support women's health. I want wellness to be accessible. I want it to taste good and not be a handful of pills. All of that, the stuff that really ignites you and your reason to be has to be solid. But how you approach it can change. And so I think the things that we did right was we picked a channel, we picked a few products, and we did it as locally as possible so that you can gain that information back, that feedback loop, like really speed it up as quickly as possible. Things that didn't work were when I tried to launch too far away from like our like initial values, and where that feedback loop was like so extended. And where it transitioned into kind of that repeatable purchase, I think really comes back to the value of the product and the understanding of the product, how you communicate it. So the the naming, even the directions, the positioning of that turmeric latte mix changed a lot over a period of 24 months, because you can't be there to force a repeat purchase every single time someone comes into store. And ultimately in CPG, it only works if people come back and repeat. That's the whole name of the game. So I think it's about baking in value into the product and making sure that people can repeat the experience wherever they have it. So if me making the product tastes significantly different than them making it at home, than Federal Store making it, it's about like the consistency and the value of the experience of someone having that product at home. Um, and we needed stronger messaging on that, stronger positioning, better directions, all those types of things to really get that right. And so the turning a customer, like a passive sample, into a repeatable customer is really about true product market fit and the value people have at home. And you can be 90% of the way there and it not be enough. So I think it's like really about getting that product market fit locked and loaded as close to home as possible before expanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Genius. I love it so much. Who else is out there? Hop off mute.
Um, Karen, I have a question for you. Hi.
Yeah.
Um, I work fractionally across a number of businesses, and I'm always coming to the table with this conversation around community and brand values. And I think one of the challenges that I experience the most is really the selling point of why this should be a focal area for these businesses when they've been so used to display ads and meta spend, and they can really easily feel the tangible impact of that. And I can do a great job selling this in, but if this company has never experienced working in community before, or really kind of pushing forward with hardlined brand values that they stick to in every kind of area, it feels very whimsy to them. And
Mm.
they're like, that sounds wonderful and it sounds lovely, but we don't really know whether we're going to see any impact on that, and certainly not in the near term. And so I'd love to know from you, as a founder and as a leader, some of these, I guess, conversations that you've had maybe with other people in your team or other founders, where you've been able to kind of carry the message as to why it is so important that brands start to focus in this area.
Well, you know, I can understand that people think it feels like whimsy and it feels like, buzzword maybe, but I think there is a really like you can draw a direct line to actual performance of your other channels too. So Meta, for I think 95% of marketers, has gotten more and more expensive over the years. It's a risk mitigation strategy to bring other people in. It's a way for us to refine messaging. Even Meta has creative testing campaigns. Can't we test and learn in other places too? I think that this performance minded marketer just needs it reconnected or regrounded in the KPIs that they're being held responsible for, right? They have a scorecard. It's based on revenue and ROAS and return on and how do you relate these activities back to goals that make sense to them? And it does relate back and it does support their overarching goals. Having having a clear understanding of why people buy, having a clear understanding about how people use it, having social proof content of people drinking it and enjoying it, having testing and learning different marketing strategies all relate back to traditional performance marketing scorecards. And so I think it's getting it out of the whimsy for them and relating it to their goals and how it can be supportive is the best way to move the needle with these very analytical sort of performance marketers.
Yeah, I agree. Especially as more companies that I speak to are moving towards this very AI focused, fast pace of like, let's get things done and see how much we can achieve in a short space of time. You are coming in at the potentially opposing kind of part of that conversation and trying to sell something that they've not necessarily thought of before. And it can be a fun conversation.
Yeah. And I think that AI is something people are learning and experimenting with too. And that experimentation mentality that does make so much sense to a performance marketer, I think they need to be maybe like the coaching is almost more around how do you be more channel agnostic about that. Is creative testing doesn't only have to happen in a meta campaign, doesn't only have to happen in a Claude like integration. It can happen in community events and sampling. It can happen in interviews. And so I think where I've had the most success bringing people on board with brand activity and community activity is relating it back to sort of shared goals in that sense.
Great question, Emily. And no surprise, like I feel like you came in from when I first thought of you, I was like, she's a growth marketer. But it's been so wonderful to see like you embrace like the power of investing in community. And it may not be for everyone, it might not be for every brand, right? If you have a strong why and purpose, I feel like there is a chance for you to invest in community. We probably have time for a couple more. Who has a question for Karen?
I have one. It's
Hi,
Jacqueline.
Jack.
I'm off camera. I'm in the car.
You're perfect.
But nice to see everybody. Thanks, Karen, for your time. How do you think about, um, I want to say the word ambassadors, but there's a lot of different words for it around the brand. And do you consider that community marketing for Blume, or is that something that sits um, outside of that?
Hmm. We have a program, we call it Bloom Kind, that I would say is kind of creator ambassadors. And I definitely put them in the community bucket. We try and celebrate things that are happening in their life. We do a lot of outbound engagement and events with them and try and tap into their communities and vice versa. But I think it depends a little bit on how those communities are built. Like we don't provide affiliate codes right off the bat. We don't pay for someone to try the product. So I think it's a little bit in like the nuance of how these programs are set up. But in general, I think it is like a part of your community and an influential part, even if it's someone who like something that we're changing from is actually we don't work with macro content creators or macro influencers right now. We decided that we would rather work with, you know, influential chefs in their area, influential thought leaders in their area, and maybe they have 500 followers, but those followers are true friends and people who respect their opinion. And so we see it as like almost like an extension of our community. So our community overlaps with all sorts of different sections, and you know you can go as broad as you want to go. Maybe there's an investor community, maybe there's my founder community, maybe there's our customers, maybe there's the super customers, maybe there's the content creators, and they all overlap and mesh in some way. And I think the key is that if you're a small business and you're just starting focusing on community, pick the one or two most impactful and really be connected to them. So it's not about being something to everybody. It's about how do you build really strong, meaningful connections where that person is at dinner talking about how they love Super Belly or out for brunch with a friend saying that they're going to a brand event from Blume. I think that's what really matters is like that deeper connection. And so the way that I would approach it is like, yes, there are all these different facets of community and you can create definitions for all these different groups. But as small brands, emerging brands, pick the ones that you really want to focus on and build deep connections there.
I'm so glad you asked that question, Jack, because it's always like, where does it fit? What, and I like your philosophy there, Karen, of like, you could actually make an argument that so much of what you do as a business actually can kind of fall under community. I'm going to represent Karen here, who's not feeling so great, but had a question about, and this is are you comfortable, if you're comfortable sharing, customer numbers by major Canadian cities. So Vancouver, obviously, you talked about like winning at home, and it being a prime market for you. Are there? I guess she's curious, or they're curious how other cities are blooming. So yeah, I mean, obviously numbers wise, like as much as you're comfortable sharing, but just maybe how what you're seeing trend wise across Canada and which kind of cities are blooming.
So it's that's a hard question. Based on our direct to consumer data, so like our Shopify data, it's sort of like Vancouver number one, Toronto number two, and almost follows like population. One thing that we have noticed more from store data is some of our best velocities, or like, so our best sell through is in places like Kelowna, the suburbs of Calgary, our best performing store takeovers. So, you know, me sort of like taking details, like where are most of the orders going? It's Vancouver and Toronto, but that doesn't really necessarily tell us that much. It's, I think more telling is sort of how engaged people are via the events that you're doing, the sampling you're doing, where the inbound requests are coming from. And something we're learning is that almost like suburb around major cities, it has like a higher level of engagement. And so that's something that we're starting to build into our community strategy.
Yeah, don't discount the suburbs. Okay, we're running out of time, my friends. What I can commit to is if there are unanswered questions in the chat, Karen, I'll make sure that they get to you, and maybe we can find a creative way, like you could send a voice note or something like that. And then this conversation has been recorded, so we are going to post it on our YouTube channel. And so if you're following Community Academy on social, you'll see us post about this after the fact. A huge thank you, Karen, for showing up and being so willing to just share so authentically. And I feel like we're so many incredible takeaways from this conversation. So thank you. Thank you, everyone who carved out the time in your day. We have our next Brand Together session slated for June 11th. We're going to have a really special guest that we'll be announcing in the next couple of weeks. So hope to see you all there. And thanks again for joining. We'll have a great rest of your Thursday and happy long weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.